Visitors this morning. From where? Florida? Is that what you said? And?
Shady side.
Shady side. Okay, you came here for the weather. Huh, good. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Well, welcome to all of you here this morning. I would like you to open up your scriptures today to the first reading from the book of Baruch. Now, this first reading today, which the church chooses, requires a little bit of understanding. First of all, it's a poem. And who was Baruch? Baruch was kind of the secretary to Jeremiah the prophet. And so he wrote down everything that Jeremiah said. And this book is accredited to his name, but it's probably not his writing. It's probably the work of Jeremiah or others. And it's a very important book because a very important reading, and this poem, because it kind of sets the stage for what Advent really is all about. What was going on at this time, this was about 500 years before Christ. And the Babylonians, King Nebuchadnezzar, had just come in and taken over, and the temple was about to be destroyed. And the Hebrews were to be carried off into slavery again into the kingdom of Babylon. And so it was a dark time. And so the prophet stood up, and this is the poem that was recorded. He says, "Jerusalem, take off your robe of mourning and misery. Put on the splendor of glory from God forever. For wrapped in the cloak of justice from God, bear on your head the mitre that displays the glory of the eternal name. For God will show all the earth your splendor. You will be named by God forever, the peace of justice and the glory of God's worship. Up, Jerusalem, stand upon the heights. Look to the east and see your children gathered from the east and from the west, and at the word of the Holy One, rejoicing that they are remembered by God. Led away on foot by their enemies, they left you. But God will bring them back to you, borne aloft in glory as on a royal throne. For God has commanded that every lofty mountain be made low, and that the age-old depths and gorges be filled to the level ground, that Israel may advance secure in the glory of God. The forests and every fragment kind of tree have overshadowed Israel at God's command. For God is leading Israel in joy by the light of his glory, with his mercy and justice for company." Now, what was happening is the Israelites were all running around saying the sky is falling. We're doomed. It's all over for us. Sounds like economists of our day, you know. Everything's done. There's no point. There's no use. It's over for us. And Jeremiah the prophet stood up and he told them, "Stand up on the heights. Put your heads high, for God is coming to you." That's the message during the season of Advent. No matter how difficult things may seem, no matter how bleak things may seem, that we belong to God. There is nothing that can separate us from God. There is nothing that can keep us from our task. So, as we make our way through Advent, already here it's the second Sunday of Advent. We should take the prophet Jeremiah through his secretary Baruch. We should take this poem to heart. And we should realize that in the midst of all this, God will shine his light. In the midst of all this, God is with us. God walks with us on the journey. God is our companion. Today, in this reading and in the gospel where it's kind of referenced by Jesus, this same reading, he talks about things happening. It's about changing attitudes. It's about seeing that the glass is not half empty but half full. It's about looking at our resources. It's about looking at the many gifts that God has given us and removing ourselves and going back to God and learning our dependence upon Him. We learn also from the readings today that there's a task that we have to perform, and it's poetically described as leveling the mountains and filling in the valleys. Those wonderful words put to music by Handel and in the music, The Messiah. I'd sing it for you, but I'm getting old. That the mountains will be leveled and the valleys filled to make a highway for the Lord. Now, that brings us to our task today. That brings us to who we're supposed to be during the season of Advent. That our task is to make the road to Christ easy for other people. And whatever mountains are there, whatever mountains keep us from God, whatever mountains keep us or others from knowing who God is, we need to level those mountains. And those mountains could be most anything. They might be our own inability to forgive. They might be our own inability to forget. It may be our own inability to truly reach out to someone in need. As you and I pray today, we need to think about what valleys need to be filled in our lives and what mountains need to be leveled so that people can come to Christ. And parents, I remind you that the fourth commandment is the fourth commandment because your task is to reflect accurately to your children who God is. And so ask yourself and challenge yourself, what kind of God have I taught my children about? That's okay, leave him out. He can come out. Come on.